There are moments in life when you feel utterly alone, battling invisible storms. But what if you had a silent companion, someone or something, watching over you, guiding you, even if you never knew it? This is the story of Ethan, a man whose life was quietly shaped by an unseen companion. Ethan was just 6 years old when he first felt the pang of loneliness. His parents were always busy working, leaving him to wander the small backyard of their suburban home. One rainy afternoon, as he stared out the window, he noticed a small, scruffy dog limping into his yard. The dog, brown with a white patch over one eye, seemed hurt but determined. Ethan rushed outside with a towel. For days, he nursed the dog back to health, naming him Buddy. His parents were hesitant to keep a stray, but eventually gave in when they saw how happy Buddy made Ethan. Buddy became Ethan's best friend. When kids at school teased him, Buddy was there to cheer him up. When his parents argued late into the night, Buddy curled up beside him, offering silent comfort. Years passed, and Buddy remained Ethan's closest companion. The bond they shared was beyond words. Buddy wasn't just a dog to Ethan, he was family, a silent guardian, and his only confidant in a world that often felt cold and distant. Buddy would greet Ethan with wagging tails and excited barks every time he returned from school, as if the hours apart were an eternity. On days when Ethan was upset, Buddy would lie quietly beside him, his soft brown eyes seeming to say, "I'm here, you're not alone." But time is an unstoppable force, and as Ethan grew into a teenager, Buddy aged too. His once vibrant steps became slower, his playful barks softened to gentle whimpers, and his energy faded with each passing day. Ethan noticed the little things first. Buddy struggled to climb the porch stairs, and his favorite game of fetch didn't last as long. One frosty December morning, Ethan woke up to find Buddy still lying in his bed, unmoving. Panic surged through Ethan as he knelt beside him, but Buddy opened his eyes weakly, looking at Ethan as if to reassure him. "Mom, something's wrong with Buddy." Ethan's voice cracked as he called for help. His parents hurried him to the vet, where the news was grim. Buddy's health was deteriorating due to old age, and there wasn't much they could do. Ethan sat silently in the waiting room, clutching Buddy's leash, his heart heavy with the weight of impending loss. Over the next few weeks, Ethan devoted every moment to Buddy. He carried him outside when he couldn't walk, fed him by hand when his appetite waned, and stayed by his side, reading stories aloud as Buddy rested his head on Ethan's lap. One evening, as snow began to fall outside, Buddy lay curled up by the fireplace, his breathing shallow. Ethan knew it was time. With tears streaming down his face, he whispered, "You've been my best friend, Buddy. You've given me so much. I love you." Buddy opened his eyes one last time, as if to say, "I love you too," before closing them forever. Ethan hugged him tightly, sobbing into his fur. That night, as the snow covered the yard, Buddy was buried beneath the oak tree where they had spent countless afternoons together. Ethan placed Buddy's favorite chew toy on the grave, a final token of their unbreakable bond. The days that followed were the hardest Ethan had ever faced. The house felt empty without Buddy's presence. Every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind outside, reminded him of the silence left behind. He avoided the backyard, unable to face the spot where Buddy rested. For the first time in his life, Ethan felt truly alone. As the years went on, Ethan carried the memory of Buddy in his heart. Though the pain of loss dulled with time, the void Buddy had left remained. Ethan often found himself looking at the old photos of them together, his fingers tracing the outline of Buddy's wagging tail frozen in the picture. By the time Ethan left for college, Life had become a whirlwind of classes, new friendships, and the pressures of adulthood. Yet, in the quiet moments, late at night when he sat in his dorm room or walked home alone after a long day, he felt something, a warmth, a presence, like a comforting hand on his shoulder. One evening, Ethan was struggling with an assignment that seemed impossible to finish. Frustrated, he slammed his pen down, resting his head on the desk. As his mind wandered, he suddenly felt a soft breeze brush past him. The room was closed, no windows open, but the sensation was unmistakable. It reminded him of the times Buddy would nuzzle his leg when he was upset, as if to say, "You can do this." A faint smile crept onto Ethan's face. "Thanks, Buddy," he whispered, though he didn't fully understand why. Over the months, these little moments became more frequent. Walking to class, he sometimes swore he could hear the faint sound of paws padding behind him. At night, he felt a gentle warmth near his feet, reminiscent of how Buddy used to curl up on his bed. Ethan dismissed it as his imagination, but deep down, he found comfort in it. One particularly challenging day, Ethan failed a major exam. Sitting alone in the campus park, he felt the weight of disappointment crush him. He buried his face in his hands, overwhelmed by the thought that he was letting himself and his parents down. Suddenly, a memory from his childhood surfaced. A rainy day when Buddy had limped into their backyard for the first time. Ethan had been scared back then, unsure if he could help the injured dog, but he had tried anyway, and that simple act of kindness had led to the most rewarding relationship of his life. The memory reignited something in Ethan. He thought about Buddy's unwavering resilience, how he had fought through his injuries to live a full, happy life. If Buddy could keep going, so can I, Ethan told himself. That night, as he worked late to prepare for a retake, he felt it again, the invisible presence. It was as if Buddy was right there, watching over him, silently cheering him on. And in that moment, Ethan realized that love doesn't vanish with time or distance. It lingers, shaping us in ways we might not always understand. From then on, Ethan began to embrace the presence. Whenever he felt lost or overwhelmed, he would close his eyes and think of Buddy, his loyal companion, his silent guardian. And though he couldn't see him, Ethan knew he was never truly alone. Time moved forward relentlessly, as it always does, and Ethan found himself standing at a crossroads in life. College had ended, and he was faced with the uncertainty of adulthood. His dream of becoming an artist seemed distant, overshadowed by the demands of finding a steady job and supporting himself. Ethan had moved to a bustling city, far from the quiet town where he'd grown up. His tiny apartment on the 12th floor overlooked a concrete jungle, a far cry from the fields and oak tree he once knew. The world outside was noisy and chaotic, but inside, the silence was deafening. One day, after an exhausting shift at his temp job, Ethan collapsed onto the couch, staring at the blank canvas he'd set up in the corner weeks ago. He hadn't painted in months. Every time he picked up a brush, doubt crept in, whispering that he wasn't good enough, that he'd never make it as an artist. That night, as he lay in bed tossing and turning, he felt it again, a warm, familiar sensation near his feet. Ethan sat up, looking around the dimly lit room. The feeling wasn't unsettling, it was comforting. It reminded him of Buddy, of the nights he would curl up at the foot of Ethan's bed, offering silent reassurance. Suddenly, Ethan felt a surge of determination. He got up, grabbed his paintbrush, and stood before the blank canvas. He closed his eyes and thought of Buddy, of the joy and comfort he'd brought into Ethan's life. With a deep breath, he began to paint. Hours passed unnoticed as Ethan poured his heart onto the canvas. When he finally stepped back, he saw a vibrant image of Buddy sitting under the oak tree, the sunlight filtering through the leaves. The painting wasn't perfect, but it was alive, filled with emotion and love. Ethan smiled, feeling a spark of hope reignite within him. "Thanks, Buddy," he whispered. The painting of Buddy under the oak tree marked a turning point for Ethan. It reminded him of why he had fallen in love with art in the first place. Not for recognition or success, but for the simple joy of creating something meaningful. Encouraged by this rediscovery, Ethan began painting every night after work. His tiny apartment slowly transformed into a gallery of emotions. A painting of the first time he met Buddy, another of Buddy chasing a ball, and one of the snowy evening when they said goodbye. Each piece was a tribute to the love and lessons Buddy had given him. One afternoon, as Ethan walked to a nearby coffee shop, he carried one of his paintings with him, intending to gift it to a friend. A stranger stopped him on the street, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and an air of sophistication. "Excuse me," she said, pointing to the painting. "Did you make this?" Ethan hesitated, unsure of what to say. "Yes, I did," he replied. "It's beautiful," she said, studying the painting closely. "I run an art gallery downtown. We're hosting an exhibit next month, and I'd love to feature your work." Ethan's heart raced. "Are you serious?" he asked, almost unable to believe what he was hearing. The woman smiled. "Absolutely. Your art has soul. It tells a story, and that's rare these days." For the first time in years, Ethan felt a glimmer of confidence. He thanked the woman and agreed to showcase his work at the exhibit. Over the next few weeks, Ethan worked tirelessly to prepare for the event. He painted late into the night, pouring every memory, every emotion into his art. And through it all, he felt Buddy's presence, as if his loyal companion was guiding him every step of the way. The day of the exhibit arrived, and Ethan stood nervously in the gallery, surrounded by his paintings. The room was filled with people, art enthusiasts, collectors, and casual visitors. As they wandered from one painting to another, Ethan watched anxiously, unsure of how his work would be received. To his surprise, people lingered in front of his paintings, their expressions filled with awe and emotion. He overheard snippets of conversations. "This reminds me of my childhood dog. Look at the love in those eyes. It's so real." It's like the artist captured something beyond the physical. One painting in particular drew the most attention: the portrait of Buddy under the oak tree. A young couple stood in front of it, holding hands. The woman wiped away a tear as she said, "This reminds me of my golden retriever, Max. He passed away last year. It's like he's here with me again." Ethan approached her cautiously. "I'm glad it resonates with you," he said softly. She turned to him, her eyes glistening. "Did you paint this?" "Yes," Ethan replied. "It's based on my dog, Buddy. He was my best friend." The woman smiled through her tears. "You've captured something incredible. Thank you for sharing this." As the evening went on, Ethan felt a sense of fulfillment he hadn't experienced in years. His paintings weren't just art. They were a connection, a bridge between him and others who had loved and lost. Near the end of the night, the gallery owner approached Ethan with a wide grin. "Your work has been a hit," she said. "We've already sold 3 pieces, and several more have offers." Ethan was stunned. "I can't believe it," he said. "Believe it," she replied. "You have a gift, Ethan. Keep sharing it." As he left the gallery that night, Ethan looked up at the starry sky and whispered, "We did it, buddy." On his 40th birthday, Ethan's mother handed him an old envelope she had found in the attic. Inside was a letter written by his late father, whom Ethan had always believed was distant and indifferent. The letter read, "Ethan, I know I wasn't always there for you, but I want you to know that I loved you deeply. When I saw how much Buddy meant to you, I realized I didn't need to say much. I only needed to let you have a friend who would never leave your side. Buddy wasn't just a dog. He was my way of giving you the love I didn't know how to express." Tears streamed down Ethan's face. For the first time, he understood that his unseen companion wasn't just Buddy. It was also his father's love, quietly guiding him all along. Ethan spent the rest of his life sharing his story through his art. His exhibitions often featured images of companionship: a boy and his dog, a father and son, a figure standing in the background, always watching over. People from all walks of life connected with Ethan's work. They saw their own unseen companions in his paintings, loved ones, friends, or even pets who had shaped their lives in silent, profound ways. Ethan often said, "Love doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it's the quiet presence in the background, the unseen companion who stays with you even when you think you're alone." Ethan's story reminds us all that we're never truly alone. Whether it's a beloved pet, a family member, or even a memory, there's always an unseen companion shaping our journey, reminding us of the power of love and connection.